and welcome to the Pacific Islands Area FY21 Conservation Solutions through Strategic Partnerships webinar. Thank you for your interest. We're going to be talking about this funding opportunity, USDA NRCS PIA Multi 21 NOFO 0001062, which is the fiscal year 2021 PIA Conservation Solutions through Strategic Partnerships, and this offering can be found on grants.gov. If you've never applied for a federal grant, you may want to do this federal financial assistance training that's being offered. The link is in the funding opportunity, and there are 5 modules that talk through things that would be helpful to you for applying for federal assistance. So in RCS, the Pacific Islands area, we did our strategic plan about a year ago. Our mission is to deliver conservation solutions so agricultural producers can protect natural resources and feed a growing world. And our vision is resilient islands with clean and abundant water, healthy soils, and thriving agricultural communities. And towards that, we want to increase our conservation delivery capacity with innovative projects and programs. And we want to increase the number of partner staff and technical service providers implementing or supporting conservation delivery. So basically, we want to serve our customers better by increasing our capacity to deliver conservation. So in this agreement, or in this funding opportunity, we have opportunities for people to help us increase our conservation delivery capacity. And doing that through, soil and water conservation districts or other partners to increase the number of partner staff that we have implementing or supporting conservation delivery. And that would be primarily, I guess, initially we would like to look at if there's anybody that's interested in doing this in American Samoa or in the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or in any NRCS service center area in the Pacific Islands area where help is needed. And basically we want to improve our Farm Bill contract completion rates and to improve our practice implementation. And so what these planners that we were looking for partners to help us by, supplementing our current staff is we want help with doing conservation planning, inventorying resources, identifying conservation needs, presenting alternatives to producers, developing the schedule of practices to be implemented, and then reviewing the environmental and cultural resource impacts of those practices. And then we'll we'll use that staff to help with implementation, developing the practice implementation requirements, providing inspection and assistance for practice implementation and certification of applied practices. We also need help with administrative services, accepting and processing applications, preparing correspondence, contract reviews, notices of non-compliance, processing modifications and payments, electronic filing of contract documents, and assistance with audits and preparing reports. And then technical services like creating maps and client files and conservation desktop. So that's one of the first things that we're looking for in this funding opportunity. The second thing that we're looking at is in our strategic plan, we want to implement soil health strategy to develop at least 200 soil health plans by 2025. And we also want to develop projects that include an array of partners which amplify the outcomes for soil health, carbon farming, and watershed function. So towards that, we have a priority to increase the adoption and implementation of soil health plans on cropland by organizing interactive feedback, education, and outreach events to engage customers to interest them in soil health management systems and plans. So it's an outreach to producers to, get them to consider doing these soil health management plans. The second thing is to build local conservation delivery capacity of certified technical service providers to develop soil health management plans per the Soil Health Management Plan Criteria Practice Activity Code. And so this would be when we have actually in our Environmental Quality Incentives program, we have a conservation activity plan practice where producers can come in and sign up to have a plan done for them. But the plans need to be done by technical service providers that are certified on our technical service provider site. And so we don't have any currently. And so what we're looking for is a partner who would help us to outreach to potential technical service providers and to, help them to get to where they can sign up and provide the service to farmers. And the third thing is to evaluate carbon and nitrogen cycles in local cropping systems to assess impacts of established conservation practices on soil organic matter and soil carbon. So it's the data, right, behind, trying to get people to do it, trying to get the technical service providers in place, but we need to have like tools that will help the technical service providers and our staff to help producers to kind of have more information on how this works and how it's going to help their bottom line, right, with their farm, and how they're going to help the soil health. The third thing is we want to develop 3 projects that include an array of partners which amplify outcomes for soil health, carbon farming, and watershed function. And so we have a priority where, if there's a project that supports an innovative project to amplify these outcomes of the economics of soil health, of soil carbon amendments, of watershed function, we would be interested in a project that does that. And then part of our strategic plan is to deliver highly effective conservation solutions for our customers. And towards that, we are working with a targeted conservation delivery model where, we're basically strengthening our ability to provide conservation by, rather than doing like shotgun conservation where whoever walks in the door, that's who we work with, we want to actually identify what the priority resource concern is that we could actually impact with our services and our practices. And we want to focus our efforts. We want to focus our staffing and our training and our funding resources to try to actually move the needle on a resource concern. And so that's that targeted conservation delivery model. And then we also want to, accelerate the results through strategic partnerships of our efforts. So we have the TCD and strategic plan. Those are reflected in the priority number 5, which is to accelerate results through strategic partnerships that support the targeted conservation delivery strategy that a Pacific Island area is moving towards, and to support our Pacific Island area strategic plan initiative. Okay. So projects need to be done in accordance with NRCS manuals, handbooks, bulletins, and instructions, and there's a list of them there. The Conservation Planning Policy, the National Planning Procedures Handbook. So we follow the 9 steps of planning, and these are all outlined in those manuals, handbooks and manuals, and then also the general manual. We have a number of business tools that we utilize. Conservation Desktop and the CART are 2 of the tools that we use to assess resources and then look at alternatives for addressing those resource issues. We have with the programs, we have the conservation and program contracting manuals. So as we move to from conservation planning, and we have proposed practices that we feel will address those resource issues, and we have producers who are willing to do those to improve their resource conservation. We will have incentive payments that could potentially, they could potentially apply for. And so the programs that we have and the policies that apply to them are in those manuals. The other thing that we would like to do is as you develop your projects, meet with the local district conservationists and soil and water conservation district, because that's really important that that they are aware of what you're doing and that they may have roles in what you're proposing. So it'd be really good to visit with them. For proposals that rely on partnerships, include meetings with those working groups or partners or stakeholders as part of your proposal. And then any agricultural producer that receives a payment through participation in a project must meet Farm Bill eligibility and have control of the land involved for the term of the proposed award period. So that's like implementing, if your project involves implementing a practice on an agricultural producer's land. So this is I just wanted to note that this is the catalog of federal domestic assistance funds. These are the funds that we included in this. We have funding for conservation technical assistance, which is just our technical assistance that we provide to producers. We have our environmental quality incentives program, which is a program that addresses resource concerns. So it helps to provide incentive payments for people installing conservation to address a resource concern. We have the Agricultural Management Assistance Program, which is a really interesting program. It's a program to help people get into compliance with so that they can apply for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. So a lot of times there'll be somebody who has maybe highly erodible land, so they don't qualify for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. They need to have a conservation plan and to install practices that will get them into compliance with the highly erodible provisions. And so under the Agricultural Management Assistance Program, they can apply for those kinds of things. In Pacific Islands area, we use it for high tunnel installations. The Conservation Stewardship Program, we have some of those funds in there. And that program is really interesting. It's for people who have reached a level of conservation and are interested in enhancing that conservation. A lot of times those enhancements deal with wildlife habitat, pollinator habitat, or soil health improvement. And so these are kind of like our little bag of tricks, resources that we have that we assist people with. And these are the kinds of services that are tied to the proposals that you're going to make. So the work must be in the Pacific Islands area, in Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, Commonwealth of Northern Marianas. Again, we don't offer these grants for the foreign areas that are part of PIA. And who can apply? So this is for city or county governments. Oh, I did that twice. City governments, county governments, nonprofits that have and do not have the 501c3 status, private institutions of higher learning, public and state-controlled institutions of higher learning, and state or territorial governments. The funds available for this offering is $1 million. The funding floor, so the least amount that you can ask for is $60,000, and the maximum you can ask for is $500,000. And there's not a specific match requirement for this. However, applications will be evaluated in part on the relative contribution of non-federal resources to the project. So if you have some match, we'll take into consideration, and you'll get some points for the percentage of match of the percentage of the federal funds that you're requesting that you provide for match. Projects can be from 1 to 5 years, and we're anticipating a start date of September 15th, just because that's the date that the grants and agreements section guarantees that we'll be able to award. But if we are able to award it earlier, we'll do that, and you'll have a little bit of extra time on the front end. So the type of award that we're going to do is we'll do a cooperative agreement. So that means that there's going to be some agency involvement. There'll be like reviews and approvals. We'll be monitoring the project. There may be some requirements that we provide, some projects that you provide. If we're doing one where you're putting staff into our office to help supplement our field staff, then we'll provide, office space. Potentially we could provide office space, vehicle usage, IT support, as part of the agreement. And then applications for renewal. So if you're someone that has an agreement with us, or you have a project that's ending, or one that you have that's ongoing, you want to apply, you can apply also, and you still have to meet the objectives and requirements of this funding opportunity, but we may actually be able to amend the existing agreement to add the work that you're proposing. So submissions. The submissions for this, I think this is new. They have to be, before we allowed people to email them to us, but you have to now submit your applications through grants.gov electronically. So to do that, it takes a little bit of time, so you want to make sure that you start early. You're going to register. So you can go into grants.gov and you can download all the materials for the the offering. You can do the notice and everything, but you're not going to be able to actually apply unless you have an account with them. So to register to apply, you need to have your DUNS and SAMS number, right? So the DUNS number is your Data Universal Numbering System number, and it's a unique identifier for an entity, and it's required to register in SAM. And you have to remember all your DUNS information. So when you get your DUNS number, you need to write all that information, like your address and all that information down, because when you go into SAM, it has to match the information you put into DUNS. And it's free, so don't let anybody talk you into making them pay you to get your DUNS number. You can just do that online, and they have really helpful help desk. So just go ahead and call them if you're having any problems. But there are people that try to charge you to do this, and believe me, it's free. And the same thing with the SAMs. It's you just go on there. They have a help desk number. I've worked with people where we just call and they just they're on the line the whole time you're doing it. So get your DUNS number, register in SAM. You're gonna, once you have that, you'll be able to go into grants.gov and set up an account. You'll complete your organizational profile and establish the roles for all the people. You're gonna set up your electronic signature, and then you're gonna create a workspace. So that's kind of where all your application stuff goes in. So prior to that, it's just like setting up an account. And then once you have your account, you can create a workspace, and you'll do a workspace for each different application. So you'll complete your workspace, your application in workspace, you submit it through there, and then you'll be able to track your application, through that workspace. So for your application, you want to be clear and concise. Don't assume prior knowledge as to the merits of your project. So don't just assume that we know that it's a good project, because everybody knows that soil health is important, or whatever is important. Carbon sequestration is important, or biochar is important. Just don't assume that that's the case. It doesn't have to look pretty though. Just know that we just need the facts. So make sure that all the facts are in there. Don't have to make it look pretty. So the format's important because they put it in there. So because it's in there, you want to make sure you have 1-inch margins, that it's typed, it's single space. You use a standard typeface and a font no smaller than 12 point, and number your pages, because it'd be awful to get your application kicked out because it wasn't in the right format. And then you're going to do your project narrative. So your project narrative is probably the biggest thing that you're going to be working on. Well, I take that back. It's one of the biggest things. Okay, so you have 10 pages maximum. Your summary is going to be 2 pages. It's going to have, all the basic information, the title, your applicant name, your contact information, the objective that you're addressing. So you want to go up to the priorities and you want to tell us which one of those you're trying to address. Okay, and then tell us what your project purpose and the goals that you hope to accomplish with your project, the geographic area or location, and why that matches with what you're trying to do, because it has to make sense to us. If you say, okay, I want to do this project and I want to do it here, it has to be, a lot of times if it's not the right size, right? If it's a geographic area is too big, you're not going to get any kind of effect showing, right? If it's too small, you're not going to really address the problem. Like maybe you need more people, a bigger area to actually address it, right? So you want to give some thought to your area and location that you're going to include. The project duration, how long are you going to go? 1 to 5 years, anywhere in between that. The federal funds that you're requesting and the non-federal funds that you have committed to match. So at the time of your application, you need to have those commitment letters and of the match in hand for it to count. And then what are your proposed activities, and what partners are you working with? And then what are the deliverables and benefits that you're gonna, produce? So, it's really good. Like as you get your idea, as you formulate your idea, lay out like how you think you're gonna do that, right? Put it on a timeline, right? figure out like what activities do I need to get from point A to point B on this project, right? And then, you know, what are the resources that I'm going to need to be able to hit those milestones, right? And what products am I going to do as I go through, you know, when at each milestone, what are my products going to be? And having that will help you to feed all of this information that you need to provide us. All right. And then you're going to have a project description. You're going to talk about the background of your project and the objective, the methods that you're using. Here's your action plan and timeline, and you know how you're going to manage the project. You know who's going to be involved, who's going to do the reports, how do you communicate with each other, right? Are you going to have if you have a multiple partners, are you going to have team meetings periodically to make sure you check in, and how are you going to do that, right? And then if you have references, do those as an attachment and they won't count towards your page maximum. All right, and then there are a number of forms that you have to fill out. The application form, the SF424. Make sure you fill out every box that's you need to fill out. There's instructions. I'm sorry, I thought it was a form, but when you fill it out, oh, it's this one. Sorry. Oops. Hang on. When you fill it out, oops. Okay. When you fill it out, make sure you fill in all the information. So you want to make sure you have your EIN number and your DUNS number. Fill out all your address and all the information in there. There's a on the end of the sheet, there's instructions on how to fill in each blank, and so you can use that. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us. And then the SF424A is your budget information, and so this has 3 sheets. So on the first sheet, you want to, oops, I missed the first sheet. Oh, I missed the first sheet. So on the first sheet, this is the second sheet. No, this is the second sheet. So on the first sheet, you want to put the federal money on one line and the match on another line. And you want to identify it as what category, those CDFA account numbers. So if you're going to use like EQIP money, because it's going to be something that ties to the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or if it's going to be Conservation Technical Assistance, you can put multi if it's a mix of them. And then, but go ahead and on the first page, you're going to say what's federal and what's non-federal. And then in the second page, which is this one, you're going to break out, here's your federal and your non-federal, and you're going to break it out into these budget categories. So you have personnel costs, which are staffing. So if you're going to hire, say, an employee to work on the administrative paperwork, there you pay them so many dollars per hour, and they're going to spend this many hours per 2 weeks to manage the paperwork, the reports, and the payment requests, and whatever else that's necessary. So you're going to put them as a personnel staff. That's going to be their personnel salary amount. And then they're going to have fringe. They may have costs where there's health and benefits, and there's like this all the other things that you have to pay for an employee. And it may be that you're hiring it through an employment service and there's a charge for that. So that all comes in with your fringe benefits costs. And then there may be costs for travel if your person has to travel, or for the project there needs to be travel. So you want to specify how many trips, where they're to, what the cost is, includes like airfare, hotel, per diem. If there's any equipment or supplies, and equipment is anything over $5,000 that has a life of more than a year. And for those things, we work with you on disposition of those items. But anything under that would be supplies. And so you have supplies, and you would want to specify, maybe office supplies, or if you're purchasing other kinds of supplies that you need, you would want to, if you're going to do a supplies for a field day and you need whatever, you would specify that you're going to need that. And so you want to break down your costs. If, let's say, instead of your staff that you hire, you're going to use somebody on a contract to provide maybe some assistance, maybe facilitation, or Maybe they're going to come in and do some maintenance kind of work in preparation for a field day or something. That could be done as a contractual service. And then when you total up your costs, you'll have the total of direct costs. If you have a negotiated indirect cost agreement, you can submit that and put your indirect charge. If you don't have one, you can take up to 10% of your costs, your direct costs as indirect costs, if you're eligible. So you want to check into that. And then, so you want to list all of your costs on here. And there are restrictions, so you want to check, there's things that of course you can't ask for more than what's authorized. You can't ask for things that are incurred before the start of the agreement. Anything outside of the project scope wouldn't count. We can't do entertainment costs. So you want to look at the list of things. It's, this is not all inclusive. Oh, so here you go. So this is the first page. So here you have your first line of federal costs, and then you'll have your second line will be your match costs, and then your totals. And then on the second one here, you have the breakdown by categories. And then, and this is information on equipment. And then on the third page, this is a little tricky. This page is a little tricky. So in this top portion here, you're going to take your match and you're going to say whether it's match from the applicant, whether it's match from the state, or it's from another source. So this is kind of where you list out like who's providing match for the agreement. And then in this middle portion, this is how much money you're going to need in the first year of the agreement. So because we're not planning to obligate the agreement or execute the agreement until September, you only have like fourth quarter costs in the first year. All right. So you want to do, you're going to do your federal and non-federal. And so, breaking out your, laying out your project on a timeline and putting like where you're going to do things by quarter, this will give you that amount. And so in the first quarter, if you're thinking, well, I'm going to announce for hiring, right? And then I'm going to hire somebody. So I won't have so much, like salary yet, right? Because, we wouldn't have the person on board, right? And maybe you're not going to have like any field days, you might have some work group meetings. So the costs usually in the first quarter could be minimal unless there's something you have to purchase in the first quarter, for the project. So, but laying all that out, laying out your project and figure out how it's all gonna, come together will help you fill out this. So this first year of funding, and then this bottom part here is subsequent years. So first year, second year, third year, fourth year totals. And so you're gonna put federal and non-federal in there. So if you have any questions, give a holler. It's not that hard, but it is a little tricky because if you don't have all the costs laid out right now, the activities laid out, it's hard to guess how much you're going to need. But by doing that, it helps you to do that. All right, and then you're going to have to create a budget narrative that matches this breakout. So what you're going to do is for each of these categories, you're going to describe in the budget narrative how you came up with that amount and what it's going to be used for specifically. All right. So you want to explain and justify all of the items that are you requested. Detail how you determine that cost. Salary times hours. Whatever. And you want to show both the federal and the match, right? The match and both in cash and in kind. So let's say you had a project where you had volunteers coming in. You can say, we're going to, for volunteer labor under other, you can say, we think we're going to have this many hours at this rate, which is reasonable for what they're doing. And so we have this much in-kind match that these people are going to provide, right? All right. And then if for everything that you have as match, for it to count, you have to have a funding commitment letter. There's this is the information that you want in the letter. And then there's some forms you have to fill out. The lobbying form is in the, when you go into grants.gov and you go to the packet at the end and you start to fill it out, it has a list of required forms, and the lobbying form is one of them. And then the NICRA, if it's applicable, then you would need to provide that. I did notice we had one where somebody had a NICRA and they didn't send it, and they said, we'll just do the 10%. When you sign the 10% de minimis form, you're overriding the NICRA. So you want to be really careful. If you have a NICRA, you probably want to use it. If you don't, we'll use the 10% de minimis if you want to do it. If you decide not to take indirect costs, you can actually apply it as match, so that you can say that that's your contribution. All right, so once we get the applications, we're going to screen them for completeness and compliance. We're going to do a merit technical review, and then we're going to look at do a risk review. Our grants and agreements team will do a risk review, and then the selection will be made by our PIA director, Travis Thomason. So when we look at the proposals for merit and technical criteria, we're going to look at the project design, and that's going to be a big one. We want to be able to see, you know, how you've built your project, right? What kind of benefit, you know, how did you come up with it? What is it going to do? You know, we want to have it clearly, completely, you know, what your activities are, you know, what the purpose of those activities, how do they link to everything, right? We want that design and implementation strategy to be sound. And then, you know, like I said, with the area, right, it has to make sense. Everything has to kind of make sense. So you have a really nice, tight project, very clearly thought out, right? And like I said, that laying that project out on that timeline and seeing how all the pieces fit, that's really going to help you to envision that, so that you can present that to us, right? And then the impact of your project, you know, there's a compelling need for this project, right? For the goals and objectives that you're going to do. The outcomes are measurable and achievable. You know, you can clearly describe to us how we're going to see these impacts like show up, right? And then substantiate like these benefits that we want, so that, you know, we're going to see, you know, outcomes and conservation on the ground. Oops, I'm sorry. And then for partner involvement and contribution, you know, are there many partners? A lot of times what we find is, you know, we can do part of it, but we can't do all of it. So there's, you know, sometimes there needs to be a partner to come in to catch the part that, to make it, you know, kind of a whole project, right? To make it more, I guess, just more effective. I think a lot of times it's like, you know, working in just by yourself doesn't always, you know, there's things that there's so many connections, right, with how resources work and how, you know, like farmers have so many things going on. So sometimes it's not just what we do, it's going to involve like some other aspect of what their operation is touching. You know, do you have a history of collaboration and engagement with the people that we're trying to reach? We're trying to reach agriculture producers, right, and private landowners. Do you have a history of doing that, right? And can you target that? And then do you have a robust strategy for outreach and education? Because that's what we're looking for, is trying to involve more people. There is targeting for historically underserved, but when you do targeting for, if you want to claim targeting for historically underserved, you need to be doing something actively to engage historically underserved producers and landowners. So these are socially disadvantaged farmers, beginning and limited resource, and veteran farmers and ranchers. And so, you know, it could be that you're working with somebody who that's their clientele, or it could be that you're going to do a workshop or something, or some effort that's specific for that you know, a historically underserved group. So maybe it's like there's a veteran farmer group that you know, you're going to work with, and then they're going to do a workshop for their veteran farmers that they service, and then so that you're actively making an outreach to a historically underserved group. And then the leverage is your match, right? So for every I don't think I have it, for every point, for every 10% of the federal funds that you provide in match. So if you're asking for $100,000 and you provide $10,000 in match, you'll get 1 point. And if you're asking for $100,000 and you're providing $100,000 in match, you'll get the 10 full points of leverage. And then the final category is management, and this is like making sure that you've thought this through, that you're able to manage this project, your timeline is realistic, the tasks and the time and the expenses needed, they all make sense in us seeing that you're going to be able to bring this project to completion. The lead partner needs to have experience in managing similar type projects and executing these kind of deliverables, so that a little bit of information about what other experiences you've had doing that, and having the staff that's able to carry out the project. So that's what we'll be looking at. And then in the risk review, we're going to look at your eligibility, just that you meet all the criteria, that you have your SAM check is clear, you submitted it by the deadline, you have allowable costs, those kinds of things. And then we're going to also be looking at the National Environmental Protection Act, the National Historic Preservation Act, and the Endangered Species Act compliance with those. So when we look at your project, we're going to be looking at what's going to be needed for that. It'd be good if you could address that in the write-up. If there's things that you feel, oh, this is going to be something that we need to watch for, then that way we can be aware that assistance is going to be needed. So prior to any commencement of a project, we'll have to have these clearances if there's a potential for impact. So the deadline for applications is April 26, 2021 at 11:59 Eastern Daylight Time, because we're going to daylight savings on Sunday. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It's just like doesn't stop. And then, so that translates in Hawaii to 5:59 p.m. and American Samoa to 4:59 p.m. and in Guam and Saipan to April 27th at 1:59 p.m. All right, and so what to expect next? We have the webinar. You can ask questions or send questions to me or to Melanie Krismanich, who's the Grants and Agreements administrative contact, before April 7th, and then by April 12th, the questions and answers will be posted at the grants.gov site for this funding opportunity. And then the application deadline is April 26th. And we're planning to, we will select projects by May 21st. And then, as I said before, the September 15th is our award project start, our plans to start or execute the agreements by then. So some helpful documents is our strategic plan, and then also our website. And I have the links for those here, and those are in the funding opportunity. And then if anybody has any questions, they can send them to me, or as I said, Melanie can also take questions. And so does anyone have any questions at this time?
Hi, Susan. We do have one that came in. The question is, are there programs that you've previously funded through this program that you can share? I shared a link to our press release from 2020 of the projects we funded, but you might be able to speak in a little more detail to examples of previous projects.
So every year our priorities are a little different, right? The last year so almost every year we offer this first one here. So, trying to increase our delivery capacity. We have limited staffing. It's a couple of things. In past years there were hiring caps and freezes, and so we had limitations on being able to hire, but we still had a workload. And as we increased our workload, we received funds for we get like a technical assistance percentage of our financial assistance that's spent, but we couldn't hire staff with it. And it's kind of soft money because it depends on, what you spend the next year, right? So doing these agreements with partners to help extend, expand our workload or extend our capacity So this is always part of what we do, and we have, like in the past, serviced many areas. American Samoa and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, CNMI, are two areas we haven't had a partner step forward to help us, and so that's why we're interested in that. But like I said, any area, service area. So in a lot of service areas, we do have agreements with partners to provide staff to assist us with this Farm Bill contracting and assistance. Last year, we also kind of focused, there were a couple things that we focused on. We focused on our National Water Quality Initiative watershed assessments. And so last year's offering we put out we had 3 watersheds that we needed watershed assessments for, and we were able to award 2 agreements to get 2 of those assessments. So those are in the works. We also focused on targeted conservation delivery because we were moving to that this year. Let me see, I think that's kind of part in this last, this one here. So this is the targeted conservation delivery. So, we've actually moved quite a ways on that. We had some agreements to work with local working groups to develop long-range plans and come up with targeted conservation delivery proposals. And so, we still want to look at how we can streamline that and make that more effective. But many of the offices have already started on this effort. So that was some of our awards from last year were tied to that. So really, it's it's different every year, just kind of depending on what our priorities are. We do want to increase our delivery capacity. So we are looking, like I said, for especially particularly these 2, but in any area. And it doesn't have to just be regular Farm Bill things. If there's an area, and we anticipate that next year we'll have all the different targeted conservation proposals in, and we'll have selected some proposals to implement. And so let's say that an area has identified that forestry is doing invasive species removal, planting native forest, that's their priority, and they have this plan to implement it. But they don't have, in that office, they need maybe more foresters to help, right? And maybe your group has you have foresters that you can provide to assist us with that, to work with forestry people to come up with forestry plans or whatever. Soil health, that would be another thing, right? It's like it'd be a kind of combination of both. If the I'll find it, here we go. So if an area had a targeted conservation proposal for soil health, and we needed people to go in and be experts in soil health, and you had that capacity that we didn't have, or in range or whatever, that might be it might actually fall under this, where you're helping us increase our conservation delivery capacity by putting specialists into an office to provide that kind of service. I'm thinking that probably next year that might be what we're looking for, because we'll have the targeted conservation delivery areas that we're trying to projects that we'll be working on. But it's this year the soil health is really big for us. It's part of that goal to implement to develop 200 soil health plans. It's a challenge because we do need to get producers interested in it, and we have to build this capacity to deliver. So this is one of the big ones that we'll be looking for. And then but there's other opportunities that if people have, that we didn't want to make it so limited that if we got a really good proposal that was watershed function related, we didn't want to just eliminate it because we only picked soil health. And same thing with the targeted conservation delivery, right? If we got a really good proposal that we think, wow, this is somebody really thought this out, and it's going to really help us to push our strategic plan or our targeted conservation delivery strategy forward, we might select it just because hey, this is a really good project, and we didn't want to eliminate the possibility of something like that coming along. Did that help? Did I answer your question?
I think you did a good job.
Okay. Soil health.
Yes, that's all about soil health, but you can also apply it for other things too.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions right now. I just added a reminder to people to use the Q&A pod to ask questions, so we can wait just a couple minutes to see if any additional ones come in.
All right, and I do want to tell you that so we do have another offer. We have the Conservation Innovation Grants, the Pacific Islands area one that's out right now. This month, in fact, Monday or Tuesday, there will be a National Conservation Innovation Grant on-farm trial funding opportunity that will be released. There's also going to be, sometime this month, they said, the Regional Conservation Partnership Programs Alternative Funding Arrangement offering will be out this month. And then next month in April, the National Conservation Innovation Grant Classic funding opportunity will come out, and so watch for that. And also in April, the Regional Conservation Partnership Plan (RCPP) Classic Award is, I'm sorry, not award, but oh, maybe that is the award. I think the notice of funding opportunity is going to be coming out in April. So there's a lot of opportunities coming in. If you were thinking of doesn't fit this, or doesn't get selected, there are other opportunities to look at. So just throwing it out there.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, Susan.
All right.
So
well, thank you.
Putting up your email one more time just to remind
Okay.
people if they have questions later, or it's also available through the grants.gov announcement.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for your for your interest, and we look forward to seeing what you have out there, and feel free to contact us. I can't write your proposal. I can give you general guidance, and I can help you a little bit with forms. So if you have questions about the forms, yeah, and like I said, if you are working in an area, in an office, feel free to visit with the DC, the Conservation District. If you have questions about soil health and any of the soil health, and I don't have this in the either the announcement or here, so maybe that's something we'll have to put in the Q&A. But if you have questions about the soil health practices, which one is it, Amy? This one. About any of this, you can talk to Amy. Amy is our Assistant Director for Soil Science. Any questions you have about the practice, she can help with that. All right. Well, we can give you back 10 minutes of your day, 12 minutes of your day.
Thanks, Susan.
Okay, thank you, everybody.